In Chicago, Daniel Lord and Ambrose Thomas were starting their fourth decade in business. Theirs was the first company ever to be called an advertising agency and would later be known as Foot, Cone, and Belding. Their goal was modest, to keep the client's name before the public. But the firm's young partner, Albert Lasker, was searching for a more aggressive way to market his client's products, one that would set his agency above all the rest. On a summer afternoon in 1904, while Lasker worked at his desk, a clerk handed him a card. "I'm in the saloon downstairs, and I can tell you what advertising is. I know that you don't know. John E. Kennedy." Lasker grabbed his coat and went down to the saloon. There, he and Kennedy talked about advertising for hours. "Well, I'd say advertising is news." "No, Mr. Lasker. News is a technique of presentation. Advertising is a very different thing. I can give it to you in 3 words." "What are they? Tell me." "Salesmanship in print." Lasker was inspired by the clarity of the idea. By midnight, he'd hired Kennedy with the charge to build a copywriting staff versed in the art of creating ads that actually proposed to sell. The next day, advertising's first agency had the first agency creative department.
Really until Albert Lasker.
Albert Lasker is arguably the father of modern advertising.
He was the first large figure in the business. He had more power and more influence for a longer time than anybody before or since. He spends 44 years in the business. When he was launched on something, when he had someone in his sights and he wanted to persuade them to do something, look out.
Lasker's agency, Lord & Thomas, was one of the largest agencies in the country. Lasker and Lord & Thomas rode that curve, and they stayed at the top or near the top of the heap for decades.
A lot of products that Lord & Thomas were selling actually changed how people lived. Pepsodent encouraged toothbrushing, which was something novel in the 1920s. Orange juice, something you had with breakfast, was something that was created by a Lord & Thomas campaign. Another great change was Kotex and Kleenex.
He invented things that are still with us in advertising today.
In 1907, he hired Claude C. Hopkins, later to be acknowledged as the greatest copywriter ever. And over the next 16 years, the two developed ideas about the craft of advertising that are the foundation of the profession to this day. Together, they pioneered consumer research and test marketing, sampling and couponing. In a coupon program for Van Camp's canned milk, nearly 1.5 million coupons were redeemed in New York alone in a single day.
Lasker particularly liked products that were just used a few times, maybe even just used once. He didn't go for big, expensive, durable goods. It's things that you use every day and that you have to buy frequently. So one of their major successes of the 20s was Pepsodent, the first really big toothpaste.
One time he said, there's this new ingredient in Pepsodent. They came up with this word irium, which means nothing, but it met Lasker's criteria. And then they blasted the nation with Pepsodent with irium. The American Dental Association was compelled to hire a full-time staffer to field questions from America about what is irium. Certainly, whenever anybody had a breakthrough, the rest of the industry would, shake their heads ruefully and say, I wish I had thought of that. And irium was certainly one of those breakthroughs. A real ingredient, a fake name, we see it today all the time, and we are still taken in.
In December 1942, Albert Lasker summoned his 3 top managers, Emerson Foote from New York, Fairfax Cohn from Chicago, and Don Belding from California. When staffers came to work the next day, they found the exact same agency, but with a new name, Foote, Cohn, and Belding. Of the 3 new partners, it was Fax Cohn who emerged as the leader of Foote, Cohn, and Belding. He passed on the tenets of the agency's founders to a new generation through a series of memos written with directness and dry humor. They were called Blue Streaks, a name represented graphically in the FCB logo to this day.
One of the things we still have in the office is his lockbox. So this is Albert Lasker's lockbox that he always had, that he kept on his desk, and we had some of his key letters or documents in here. So whenever a new leader takes over the leadership of this office, we hand this over to this new person. There are letters in there right now, I can't share them with you because they're all the secrets of how to build big brands. Then when Albert Lasker made a decision in 1942, when he retired, to give 3 of his key leaders, Foot, Tone, and Belding, the name rights. So we have some long-standing relationships in the city. Because you're married for 30 years, it doesn't mean you will be married tomorrow. Every day you have to wake up and regain the love and the trust in that relationships. It's very similar to having clients. For me, it's so important that we have the long-lasting relationships that we truly understand their brands. When you look at Albert Lasker's concept of salesman in print, I believe half of this is as true as ever before. But I would rename it as salesmanship and emotion. Because nowadays, to sell, we have to build a true emotional connection between our consumers and our clients' brands.
To this day, the goal of creating person-to-person advertising is what binds the people of Foot, Cone, and Belding together around the world. Cone defined the term person-to-person in an essay he called The Plain Short Story of Advertising. Advertising is the business of telling someone something that should be important to him. It is a substitute for talking to him. Desirable advertisement will be reasonable, but never dull. It will be original, but never self-conscious. It will be imaginative, never misleading. Properly prepared advertisement will always be convincing and make people act. This, incidentally, is all I know about advertising. Fairfax,